Yeah, boom. Yeah, boom. No boom say. Yeah. You'd have to put boom in there, cause see. Yeah, boom. Yeah. See. There ain't no boom. Well. Alright. Alright, look. Okay, today's my 18th day of fasting. I'm all out of chicken. So I gotta get the pub some more food. And I think I'm gonna get a bunch of V8 and start drinking maybe like a bottle of V8 every day. And I think I might conclude my fast on day 21. Maybe. Sometimes I think about concluding it like right now. But look, I've made a lot of progress, alright, since the first time I made one video called Belly Fat. Now, I can get in here. Hey. Hey. I see. Look, it's not hanging over. Not hanging over like it was, but I still have belly fat. But look, I mean, not like it was. So I have satisfied myself now, because I mean, look, I mean, hey, I'm not fat like I was. This is size 32 pants I'm wearing. So, well, I mean, I think I better just go to 21 days. That'd be 3 times 7, which seems to be two good numbers to me. 3 and 7. 3 times 7 is 21. I don't know if it means anything or not. I don't know. Probably don't, but look, it's not that hard for me to continue on day to day without eating now. And now I'm at the point where I have to discipline myself to, step it up again. I mean, like I said, at first, it kind of put me in a slump, not eating. But after 15 days, I kind of was able to address that in a more intentional manner. And now I'm coming into my own, so to speak. Now, last time, I was talking about, Sun Tzu and the art of war, because, look, the way you have to understand in context, and because, I mean, he's about the same time frame, as the Buddha, about 500 BC, somewhere around there, and like the story of Jesus and stuff like that. I mean, they don't really even. I mean, some people think that he's just a mythical figure. The Chinese, made him up, personified, and boom, just can't. He just wants some loving today. I don't know why. Oh, he knows I'm probably gonna go get him some food. He's a big boy. Boom's like Boom, come on now, baby. Yeah, I know you're a baby. He's like, Boom is like, Boom is like, 200 pounds. So, now, anyway, I just making some comparisons. I mean, people that long ago even doubt their actual real existence sometimes. That's Boom. Knocking stuff around. Alright, Boom, you gotta hold on. And so anyway, so in China, I mean, there's a lot of, they had like, 7 nations or something like that. And I mean, 7 groups. And the way that it happened is, they had what you call, barbarians. And the barbarians would, they would say, come into an area and say that, they're the king. And they're a king, and they want everybody to obey them and work for them, and they're going to be the ruler. And they just decided that that's the way they're going to make it, and that's the way it's going to be. Kind of like, bullies. Okay, the barbarians were kind of bullies. And once again, they both have B's. Barbarians and bullies. They're a lot alike. And they just decided that they're just going to be, they're going to be it. I mean, they're going to be like the top dog. Boom, another B, Boomer. He always knew he was a top dog. Even when he was only first born, he never his attitude never changed, and he's always been the biggest dog. He's always been stocky, but his weight never held him back. I mean, he's always the first one on the spot. Like, but people used to criticize me about Boom, said he's too fat and everything. But that's just the way he was born to be. Another B. I think Boom, barbaric, bully, and Boomer. Boomer is like, if he was a human being, he would be a barbarian. He would. I already know. Look, one more time I'll show you Boomer. He's a cute boy. He's a real cute boy. Man, I'm really gonna be sad when all my dogs are gone. Like, sometimes I wonder how they're gonna go, each one of them. I knew it was gonna be this way. And I've had to say goodbye to 12 dogs because I used to have 21. Now I got 7. So, 14 dogs. Anyway, there's a lot of pain. But, so anyway, yeah, the barbarians, and the barbarians, it's kind of what guerrilla warfare is based on, It's Sun Tzu's work. Sun Tzu. His work, It's stuff that came out of the Chinese area, the whole Asian area over there, And so, the art of war, that's what it grew out of. I mean, you got people coming over with swords and telling you exactly what you're going to do. Okay, it comes a time when you have to organize and stand ready to fight, to defend your position, I mean, there ain't any amount of love that's going to stop somebody from pushing a sword right into your heart. And they used swords back then, It was up close. You know, sharp swords. I mean, I told you how, one, and off went that lady's head rolling on the ground with a sword, Not even like a guillotine. They used to use guillotines too. You come down, chop your head off. Or back in the day, like Paul, I mean, he got his head chopped off with an axe. Big wide blade, I mean, just think if that guy, that executioner, kind of, missed and hit your shoulders. Have to swing again. But I guess they practiced a lot. They didn't make mistakes. They did a nice and clean job, I guess. But anyway, come through hard times. But you can't say no to the discipline of Sun Tzu. Just like you can't say no to the discipline of the Buddha, and you can't say no to the discipline of Jesus Christ and our Christian tradition here, in our America, in our land, we're what it is now. And there's a lot of other traditions, religions, histories of thought, whether you're talking about like Egypt, or you're talking about the American Indian, or the Indians from the jungles of Africa. I don't know if they're called Indians, they might be called Africans. Or say the jungles of India. About the Aztecs, or whoever. You can go all the way back to, Hermes, or Hermetic law, stuff like that. Those are constants. That stuff is true. And it's good to study. But it's just the only reason I say Sun Tzu. I put Sun Tzu in the category of the great three captains. Buddha, Jesus, and Sun Tzu. Is because Sun Tzu grapples with the need of skill to survive as a human being and as a state or a group of people. So they fought each other and everything out there in China. A lot of different bands of people, fought each other, and then when they built the Silk Road, or the Persian Road, because Chinese made all the silk, and the silk went all the way to the Roman Empire, and all the pretty silk and everything you see in the movie pictures and stuff, like in the Roman times, the women always wearing silk, that all came from China. And it was a well-kept secret how to make silk. Like, they didn't even know what silk, even where it came from or anything about it, for a long time. They thought it was like the clothes of the gods or something. I mean, And so then, but okay, so I just want to say that there is actually, it reminds me, there is, a couple of things in Sun Tzu's work, like his last chapter 13 on spies, because I just listened to the book not long ago. And there's a couple like terms in there that, like one of them, intuitive sagacity, was one thing. He was talking about intuitive sagacity, and I know the word sage, but I told my buddy Tim that he's master and sage of No Footprints Beach, a place that he discovered that nobody else goes to, private place, and he likes to take people there. Nobody else knows about it or goes there except for him and his girlfriend. What the heck is her name? I can't remember what her name is now. But like, I never met her or anything, But he's been with her a long time. I've seen pictures. He's going out there. Took his cousins out there recently, and their kids and everything. Anyway, I told him he's both master and sage of No Footprint Speech. I know what the word sage means. You know, a sage is a wise person and a teacher, and but basically a wise teacher is a sage. Well, and a sage comes from a lot of, like, you can use a lot of words for synonyms and stuff, and I didn't really know what exactly they meant by intuitive sagacity, what, you know, Sun Tzu meant by that, intuitive sagacity. It intrigued me. Same thing with the other thing he said is the best kept secret or something, and that is the secret thread of some kind of secret thread, a secret thread or something. I can't remember exactly how it goes now, but like a secret thread. Reminds me of David's secret chord that he played that pleased the Lord. And a secret thread, you know. But that was right in the area where he's talking about spies and the importance of having spies. And so you can spend a lot, you know, just think, if you do the comparison about how much war is going to cost, that's why I see it's better to have spies. And I don't really want to actually really spend a lot of time talking about all the different ways that you have to consider your opponent and actually confront life as Sun Tzu. Because, you know, look, the art of war is taught even in business school. In business school, they'll teach you the art of war, because it's kind of, business is kind of like war. You got to outsmart your enemy. You got to be more cunning, 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 and crafty, like that. You know, it's funny how a lot of these words always have like same syllables and stuff, like cunningness and craftiness. They kind of mean the same thing. Both start with C. I'm just saying. You know. And anyway, it's just a coincidence, but I mean, there's a lot of words, so obviously, you know, you're going to get a lot of words that match up and everything. But when you look at the root, like the roots of language and the roots of words and stuff like that, like, you'll find that certain like 3-letter syllables and stuff like that all come from like the same kind of meaning, and they build nuances of those meanings and stuff. Studying language is kind of really interesting. I just was watching something about Graham Bell. His dad was an elocutionist. And Graham Bell, you know, he said that he was a teacher of the deaf. His wife was deaf. And it's an amazing story. And when you are fortunate, like I am right now, to be able to spend some time just listening to stories like about inventors. Like right now, I'm actually listening to inventors who changed the world. And they talked about Graham Bell just a little bit ago. I don't know what they're going to talk about next, but they're going to talk about somebody. Before that, they were talking about another Westinghouse or somebody like that, you know, another inventor. And you know, I just prefer to put my energies towards stuff like that, you know, not having to really actually spend a lot of time thinking about my enemy and my opponent. Because it's not all about war sometimes, you know. And the reason I give Sun Tzu an important place is because, I mean, the military really is in charge, okay? And I mean, it's the way it has to be, kinda. I mean, it is. Right now, I mean, the whole world is kinda like China. China, like, as a microcosm, and the whole world is a macrocosm. I mean, they're constantly fighting everywhere. Everywhere there's fighting. And everywhere there's bullies, and everywhere there's barbarians. Everywhere. That's why you have to pay attention to Sun Tzu. Because that's what the life is that we're in. But, I mean, sometimes, it's not always like that. And we have a metaphor of a better place, it's kind of like that song, I kept running in my mind. A Vietnam song. We've got to get out of here and find a better place for me and you. Well, Graham Bell, he found a better place with him and his, he was like 27 or 28, and the woman that he married, was 16 when he fell in love with her. And she was one of his students, because he helped teach, deaf people and stuff. And he did a lot of, plus, he invented the telephone, for example. I mean, and he, it was kind of like Romeo and Juliet. I mean, her dad didn't want her to marry him, because at the time Graham Bell didn't have any money, and he wanted her to marry somebody with money. His dad, her dad. I mean, the parents are more in charge back then, and especially the fathers. But he did end up marrying her, and they had a good life together, all the way for the rest of their lives. And I mean, there's a story, they told, how they would walk, and then every time they got to a street light, they would stop so that she could read his lips, and he would tell her something. She would read his lips, and then they would start walking more, and then she would talk to him, and they would stop again at a stoplight, and he would answer, not a stoplight, but a street light, and he would answer under the street light, and so she could read his lips. And they did that, and that's how they talked when they were walking at nighttime. Because she was deaf. And then when funny movies came out, a lot of times, you couldn't hear what they were saying or something. She could read their lips, because she could read lips. And Helen Keller, who was both blind and deaf, she couldn't hear. I don't think she could hear or see. I don't think she could hear or see. But she taught herself a lot. And she wrote a book. I used to have it. Autobiography of Helen Keller. And she dedicated her autobiography to Mr. Bell, Graham Bell. And anyway, so I just want to say, it's not all about fighting. And it's better. Even Sun Tzu said, okay, fighting is the last resort. That's probably the most important thing that he said, is fighting is the last resort. And look, there's another saying that says, nobody actually wins a fight. Nobody actually wins a fight. The person who is suppressed and gives in, okay, you might say that they lose, but they don't. But the guy that conquered the other isn't necessarily like, it doesn't rise to the elevation of a real winner, because the person is defeated. They're not really gonna appreciate that, being defeated, and they're gonna hold in their hearts the time when they're gonna be able to get back. It has to do with allegiance. I mean, Just because you're defeated, that don't mean that you're gonna become an allegiant like person on the side of the person who conquered you, necessarily. I mean, you might. There is that saying: if you can't beat them, join them. See, that's where spies come in. There's a different kind of spies, and one of the great things about Sun Tzu is he breaks everything down. He's specific. When he talks about the terrain, the terrain in that area that he is with, he talks about all different kinds of terrain. He talks about all the different kinds of spies. He talks about, he breaks everything down. He's a master. But, one thing he don't talk about is, he don't talk about, like, overcoming your enemy with humor. Like I told you about that one comedian, who's a midget, and his dad helped him by saying, look, man, when you go to school, these kids are going to be picking on you. How are you going to handle that? And help and prepare. And that's another thing in Sun Tzu. He talks about, he don't say the 5 P's, but he gives the basis for the 5 P's. The 5 P's are: prior preparation prevents poor performance. Prior preparation prevents poor performance. Have to prepare. Okay? Well, this one dad taught his son, who is a midget, to prepare for the assault that you're going to receive. Bullies and stuff like that. And humor was the most disarming of all methods of countering the adversity. No. I don't really feel like I really need to talk too much more about Sun Tzu. I mean, unless if a certain point that I recall comes up in the discussion of something else, I might refer to Sun Tzu as the master of war. And we all have to engage in war from time to time. It's going to be in this life. So anyway, when I was a kid, we always watched Kung Fu with David Carradine. And see, Kung Fu was actually a good representation and a good myth of Sun Tzu's teachings. So, and because he was a master. I told you about Kung Fu. With the dragons on here and carrying the big pot of hot coals and all that. Yeah, and he defended himself against bullies, and he was not a barbarian. Okay. Anyway, so I don't want to belabor the point about barbarians. Another B. I don't want to belabor the point about barbarians and Sun Tzu and having to fight. And because, look, I was even watching about Oakland, California. I mean, that's where all the singers and everything lived and everything back in the day. But I guess Oakland, is kind of a bad place. Like, the cops never, somebody gets shot in the street, all right, cops ain't gonna come for, 20 minutes. Stuff like that, I mean, I guess it's a different kind of culture in that particular area. Anyway, expectations, cops don't come to help. Nothing like that. Anyway, a lot of black people, and that's where a lot of the gangster rap and everything. Okay, well, that comes out of a certain stratus of society. Much more difficult than I've ever been involved in, that's for sure. Because, I mean, I've never been kind of like a person to carry a gun or anything with me. you know. In that kind of situation there, no, you're fighting the tiger every day, and you know you can get killed. I mean, there's one that I watched. This interviewer was talking to a guy that got gunned down, and he got shot like 9 times. They thought he was dead, but he survived. But as a result, you know, he's paralyzed and blind. I mean, you don't want that to happen to you. And they say, you know, and they were talking about the element of surprise. Like, you go somewhere and in a snap of a second, man, your whole situation can change. And you might be caught in a crossfire. Anyway, you know, I'm hoping better for you. I'm hoping get out of the war, get out of Vietnam, you know, get out of the they like Tweeter and the Monkey Man, and the walls come tumbling down, you know, and make a better life for yourself, one with peace, characterized by peace, not war. And if you have peace, you're not going to want war. Once you experience peace, you get out of the rat race. You know. I think I'll call this one "Getting Out of the Rat Race." It might be too long. I mean, I can't say "getting out of the rat race." Fit on one line, you know. I could call it "rat race" though, minus the rat race or something. But basically, I'm just hoping I'm just hoping for you, my grandchildren, that you don't have to live your life in a cutthroat society, and that democracy can be promoted. You know, just like Reinhold Niebuhr said, you know, that the injustice of humanity makes democracy necessary. The goodness of humanity makes democracy doable, but the injustice of humanity makes democracy necessary. He said something like that. Same guy who did the prayer of serenity. God grant me the grace to help me accept with serenity the things that I cannot change, the ability to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So, they say from grace to immunity. I'm hoping for you immunity, and that's what I'm hoping even for my own self, immunity. I know, because that's why I'm separating myself. I'm concentrating on my own goals and not being involved with nobody else, so I can, like, you know, don't have to be attacked and at war with anybody anymore. No more war. I'm going to leave it at that. No more war. Always find a better way, if you can. And that even what Sun Tzu said. All right, bye.